Thank you.
Yeah, Commissioner.
Okay, I don't see any changes to the agenda. A motion?
Mr. Chair, make a motion we accept the agenda as posted.
We have a motion, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
So the first item on our agenda is Commissioner's Report and invoices.
I attached invoices to the commissioner form that you had questions on.
Thank you.
If you will just give me those when you're done.
Oh, the pink matches. Okay. Okay. There was a couple of questions that I had, and I went and asked Christie to give us a little more information. One of them, on the description, it said 5-gallon buckets for $726. Well, them buckets had chemical in them.
So this was a good learning opportunity for Luann. I mentioned to her that it's really important that when you look at what you're typing, it makes sense, but when you look back at it, it doesn't. So she's going to work on some of those descriptions.
The next one was, this one's
I
one.
marked that page that you had the question on. So find a pink tabby on your right hand.
Pink tabby
Nope,
here?
on the end, that big, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Can't remember which one that was.
Okay.
Oh, it was
The-
shop supplies.
Shop supplies.
So I asked her to clarify, there were gloves, extension cords, and a handful of other things. So I told her just to line out the higher cost items and put as much in there as you possibly can.
And that's what it was. It was just shop supplies is all it said for $300. So I guess that was my question on that one. The other one was, it just said miscellaneous training, and it was through Kenworth that they
For like
had.
$225, I think.
Mhm.
And so there were 5 individuals that went to that, and what we found is on that pink tab, it says what the training was. So she's gonna put like 5 EEs for employees, and then what the training is.
Appreciate that. And then there was one that just said levers.
Okay, that one is for the event center, and it looks like they changed a bunch of the door handles. But the PO just says levers. So I asked her to follow up with the department and in the future put what buildings those levers are going on so that we know what they're replacing. So,
And then the other one was spreader in 2 different areas, and that was a grant and then our match. That's why it was come out
Right.
2 different areas.
right. And if I can have those invoices back, and then you can keep the commission report, only because
You want to make sure you get your invoices?
we need those stuff fixed.
All right, any other conversation or discussion?
Nope. Mr. Chair, make a motion we approve the invoices as presented and discussed.
We have a motion, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All right, next we have salary rate approval forms. Any concern or question on them? Motion on salary rate approval forms.
Mr. Chair, I make a motion we approve the salary rate approval forms as presented.
We have a motion. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
This is an old one, you can see the staple.
Right, right.
Sometimes there's forms in offices
Right.
that
Well, I'm still using those notes.
have other names on them. One had Carol's name on it.
I missed it, sorry.
That's all right. All right, let's go ahead and move into our work session. Carrie?
Mr. Chair, members of the commission, Kerry Hong, Trial Court Administrator for the record. I'm here today to ask for the commission's approval on a contract amendment which was included in the packet. It has gone through Bannock County legal review. It pertains to our contractor's cost to perform drug testing for persons under supervision. This includes both persons in our treatment courts. It also includes persons who are on misdemeanor probation and pretrial who are ordered to be tested. You'll note that, as with many things, the last couple of years, costs aren't going down, they're going up. The contract amendment is to change the cost from $9.30 per test to $14.75 per test. I'd like to speak briefly on the projected costs that go to this. For persons under probation or pretrial, these costs are self-pay, and so the individuals will be given 30 days notice, and after 30 days notice, they'll have that price increase passed on to them, and so they pay that cost directly to AverHealth, so that there's no cost that has been given to the county. There is a cost associated with persons in treatment court. The state of Idaho does provide the 6th Judicial District with funding to cover the cost of drug testing. We do project that the difference between the old contract cost and the new contract cost, if we were to operate under this contract for a full year, would be approximately an increase of approximately $34,976.20. However, we're running this contract amendment with a concurrent procurement process with Shanda to do an RFP to explore who else in our community is available to do drug testing if we can achieve a lower cost than the $14.75. Based upon the timeline Shanda's been working with us, we expect to have the RFP done and ideally enter into a new contract by early May. So even though the 12-month cost of this amendment, it would be $34,000, we're actually projecting that we'd operate at a maximum of about 5 months under this contract amendment. So the actual increase of cost would be about $14,569.67. And that increase that goes to the treatment court participants would go against the state monies that are made available and deposited in our drug testing. I don't know if we don't call it a trust. It's the fund that we have that Bannock County is the fiscal agent with.
We still call it the trust.
The trust. We have a drug testing trust that contains the state monies that we would attribute this additional cost to. So there is legal did identify there's a little bit of overlap between the contract amendment. It states that it's for a full year, I believe. The original contract has terms that say that this is a ongoing and self-repeating contract, but we do anticipate one way or the other that we'll be terming the contract and entering into either a new agreement with AverHealth after the RFP or entering into a new agreement with a new vendor.
The only other concern I had looking at this is that they're going to go down to one place to do the testing, and that's over at Lander. And we are having conversations maybe of getting rid of that facility.
Mr. Chair, we've been watching those conversations, and certainly if we do see that the county is going to repurpose that building, that would change our dynamic. For us to get to that $14.75, we had to negotiate consolidating all the drug testing, and that actually reduced the number of personnel that AverHealth was going to need. Their original bid for us was almost $19 per test, and through that consolidation, we got it down to $14.75. So if the commission does make alternative plans, if you could just loop us in as soon as possible, and we'll have to change our approach. It will result in more cost to us because we can't consolidate, but we realize that building is more than just a drug testing location for us. So that would, if we do move away Commissioner Mosher from using that Lander building, we would come back here probably with a new bid to reflect the increased cost.
Okay.
And we do have an out clause, so if we go out to bid and find something different.
Yeah. So the amendment incorporates the terms of the original contract. The original contract gives us a 30-day notice without cause to term.
Okay.
And that was the clause under which AberHealth exercised this amendment. They said, we're going to term the contract unless we can get an amendment done at a higher price because their costs have increased dramatically over the last 2 years.
And we're giving them that testing space for free. We're not charging them to be in there, correct?
Correct. I mean, we say for free, it's really where they have given us a break on price because they can use our facility. They would bid us a different price if they had to rent a facility and use their own facility to do the drug testing. So that's all baked in at the negotiated price per test, the use of the county facility to conduct the testing.
Do you know what that price would be if they had to use their facility?
We had that number, gosh, when we originally were trying to negotiate with them. The last time we had it bid out was maybe 3 or 4 years ago, Commissioner Huff, so I'd have to go back and ask them. I do expect under the RFP, we'll be hearing from everybody of what would our price be if you can use county facility, and what would your price be if you're using your own facility. So I can certainly run that down and provide it to the chair. I do think it'll come up during the RFP, and we'll have to address it there because we're asking for responses on both of those options.
And I forget, what's our timetable on the RFP?
Let me pull that up. I actually have it on my laptop. I know our RFP was, the timeline was anticipating executing contract on May 11th of this year. But let me tell you on the timeline when we're expecting the RFP to get out. My laptop went to sleep, so.
It's okay.
We'll get it
Shanda?
fired up.
Talking about the RFP on the
The drug testing?
I have your timeline, Chanda. My laptop just went to sleep, and I'm waiting for it to fire up again. Oh, here we go.
Beginning of May, right?
Yeah, I think that's when we were going to have it signed. So it looks like we have finalized the solicitation March 6th, present it to the commission March 9th, post the solicitation March 19th through the 26th.
Okay.
And then we're looking to close solicitations due April 17th, and looks like we would contract sign and present to the commission for review anticipated May 11th of this year.
Okay. Okay.
Go ahead.
I see on this, looks like this is backdated to last December for the start of the contract. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, so the reason why it's backdated is we have both self-pay folks and folks who are paid under the state money provided by the Iowa Supreme Court. AberHealth is proposing that persons who are self-pay will continue to operate under the old contract until the commission, if and when the commission agrees to the new contract. Persons who are under state payment will be under the new price backdated to December 1. And that was the negotiations that we had when they gave us the notice of term. We asked them because we had concerns about continuity of service to maintain their level of service. They said they would be willing to maintain their level of service if we'd be willing to look at that backdated date for persons for whom which the state was paying the cost for. And that is that anticipated amount of about 14, so that anticipated amount about $14,569.67. That is that cost that would be backdated to December 1 going forward till approximately May 11th, where we'd start the new contract.
So they've already billed us?
They have not billed us.
Okay, so they're holding on to invoices?
Yep. So we'll get updated invoices. Everything right now has been billed under the old contract because we didn't have the amendment done. But once we get the amendment done, if the commission does execute the amendment, we would see back billings going back to December 1 for persons for whom the state is paying the testing for.
How long have you been working on this amendment?
Since maybe November, October of last year. That's when they told us that the cost of their employees had gone up dramatically. We explored a number of options, including getting Medicaid under medical necessary testing as an option to maintain the lower price. We weren't able to get that worked out with the vendor. They then said, well, here's your $18, $19 per test. We worked with Jimmy Gentry at Idaho Department of Corrections on the proposal to consolidate testing to reduce the employee cost for AverHealth, and then finally got down to this number. We then submitted the amendment to legal, and it's taken a minute to work it through legal. They've got lots of stuff stacked in front of us. And so we got it back from legal last week, and that's when we got it to the commission for agenda.
And you talked about, I think you said there was the annual cost of this drug testing, I think was around $34,000.
That'd be the annual cost
The
of
annual
just the
cost.
increase. So the annual cost to the state in terms of, I have that spreadsheet here. Commissioner, if you are asking, well, what is the total global cost all in?
I would like to know that too.
Sure. So if we look at the full cost of drug testing, and this is the cost just for the persons who are in our treatment courts for the state payment, under the current agreement, the cost is $61,543.45. That represents a number of about 6,416 tests per year. And so the way we've come up with these projections is we've looked at for the number of months we'd be operating under the new contract times the $5.45 difference in the amended rate, and that gives us the projection. So we'd be looking at for a full year approximately $95,000 for testing under the state.
And is that does that include, is that only the state-funded portion that you're talking about?
That's only the state-funded portion. We would see for misdemeanor probation and pretrial, in a year they average, last year they did about 6,321 tests, and then these are all self-pay tests, so their cost would be roughly similar, going up from about $60,000 a year to about $90,000 a year.
When you say self-pay, that means the person getting the test is paying for it.
Correct.
So are these the only two ways it's paid, from the state and from the self-test? Or is the county also?
There is a third way. If a person has been declared indigent,
Yeah.
then that person, because they're still required to test, the court can approve that the person be covered under county expense because they're indigent. Our average cost for that right now are just a couple $100 a month. Typically, folks, in terms of their drug testing and their probation fees, the court has been very conservative in its approach in ordering those costs to be paid by the county, either waiving probation fees or waiving cost of drug testing. So there would be a much smaller amount, but still would be amount that is brought to the county as indigent costs. What we've done with those is we use the court monitoring trust, which is a separate trust that is county. In the court monitoring trust, we have a couple different revenue streams that have gone in. Historically, when the county was doing its own drug testing, all the self-pay fees would be deposited in that account, and then also monies collected from charges to persons convicted for the interlock monitoring program go into that fund, and those funds can be used for drug testing. So we've used those revenue streams to cover persons who are indigent for their drug testing costs.
Okay, thanks.
So what are the ramifications if we say no today?
If we get a no today, I'd expect that AverHealth would give us the 30-day notice to term, and then we'd be scrambling to find another vendor to cover the drug testing requirements for the persons who are under testing right now. Honestly, my first thing would be I'd be talking to Evie and her crew and about potentially going back to our old system where we had county employees performing the testing. We were pretty deliberate in trying to get Evie's employees out of doing that drug testing. We actually made this change when Cindy Hockley was the probation director. Cindy's observation, and Doug Cohn kind of spans those two administrations, and he can come speak to it probably better than I. But
They're right behind you.
Oh, hey, come up here. So what we'd be looking at is when misdemeanor probation was doing the drug testing, they experienced, there are a number of both safety and administrative challenges, And instead of me speaking when the experts are sitting right here, I'd sure turn it over to them.
Yeah, I think a lot of the reason why we stopped doing that was because of the safety concerns. We would have people lined up in custody while there were people still testing. It was extremely chaotic. The other thing was too, is it just wasn't a very productive use of time for the probation officers. By the time they wrapped up testing and by the time we got all of the offenders to the jail, which also overcrowds the jail when you're arresting them like crazy then and taking those resources off the street with, the police department having to be the ones that transport. It was usually well into the afternoon before there was any regular probation officer duties starting up again because the volume of testing and having the county employees doing it was just so high. I think one of the biggest things was definitely the safety issues, though, of having all of those offenders in there and just 2 or 3 of the probation officers trying to do testing, monitor those that are in custody, waiting for transport, signing warrants, all of those things. So I think actually Cindy had even submitted some of the camera footage of what our building looked like at the time, where it's just a sea of people and us trying to, maintain those in custodies and maintain those drug tests, and it was pretty chaotic. Was there anything else at that time you
Well,
thought?
we would have we'd have 4 probation officers and 2 pretrial people and 2 drug testers testing. And our custodies were anywhere from 4 to 6 a week during testing. And because it was nice to have immediate results for the people that were positive, but we were filling the jail up and all the agencies were mad because they were transporting for us. And it was, at times you'd be arresting people and there's still 150 to 200 people coming in testing. It was pretty busy.
So is that testing a blood sample, a urine sample?
Urine.
What's urine? Okay.
A witness.
I didn't want you poking anybody.
No, it's a urine sample.
So we would, our job is to make sure we fulfill the orders of the court. So we would find a way, but it wouldn't be my first choice, and only in an emergency would we be kind of going back to what we used to do in terms of asking county employees, either probation and pretrial officers, or us trying to recruit and hire the persons to do the drug testing. They're tough jobs to fill, and in this case, it certainly is felt like AverHealth was able to recruit and retain these types of employees because of the number of other contracts that they have and keep them versus us trying to hire part-time drug testers and then tying up our probation and pretrial officers as part of the process.
Okay. Further questions? Motion?
Well, I hate spending the state's money, but they like spending our money, so I don't know if there's another option that we have. I know this is a short-term thing, but I hate the backdating. That's the part that causes me stress.
Same feelings I have.
Yeah, it sounds like, so the recommendation, if I understand it, is that we go on with this contract, but you are already starting a process of looking at some other options that might maybe put out the bid or whatever.
That's right.
It sounds like the best of bad choices.
Okay. All right, Mr. Chair, make a motion that we approve this contract amendment as presented. Thanks, Carrie.
We have a motion. All in favor, say aye.
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 Thank you, Eddie. Thanks, Doug.
Always a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, Christie? Like we have people here for,
Yes. Wes, Charity, do you guys want to come? Could you also come forward with Nancy and Alan as support?
Good morning, Wes Jones, Office of Emergency Management.
Charity Staggs, CCOG.
We wanted to bring before the commission to try to get some clarification on the wildland urban interface projects, which are the Idaho Department of Lands projects. We just had a couple of questions when going through the new application or grant applications that I think we need to get clarified before we continue on the path of these grants. The first of which is how we're going to address match monies, because these are going to be on private lands. It doesn't seem appropriate to spend county dollars on that, but there may not be a formal commitment from landowners to provide the match. So we just wanted to talk about that just a little bit and see how you wanted to address it. We could go forward with the grant application, and then if there is no match, then we just decline acceptance, if that's appropriate. Or we could start planning for match money if that's the board's desire. Charity had some ideas of county employees providing some match.
In kind or what?
In kind through seeding projects and, hey, here's my notes. Mulching, removing slash, seeding, that kind of thing. We could also have landowners who could volunteer, and we could utilize their time as match. Unfortunately, they'd have to work 800 hours to meet the match requirements, right?
Yeah. Yeah, and if they did it by volunteer, and we actually got some new information from Tire. So the way these grants work is that it goes from the federal to the state, and it's actually a 50-50, 50 for like 1-to-1 match, but IDL covers 90% of that, and then passes 10% down. So for the landowners, there's no mechanism to force them to do it. It's in the agreement that they sign with the county. But there's no penalty. Getting some clarification from Tire, he said if they can't meet it, just communicate with him, because at the end of the day, they can just meet at on IDL's level, which is awesome.
Yes, that is.
Of course, we do want to hopefully see them do it, because that's a great chance for them to learn how to maintain the land later down the road. We also did find out that grazing can be used as maintenance and match. Yeah, yeah.
So all you have to do is put 800 head of cattle for an hour, and you've got your
Yep.
match.
Yeah. They said it's actually quite easy, especially when you consider that in there to get it,
Okay.
to meet it.
Okay. So I guess that kind of takes.
That's kind of how I understood it when we started down this path, is the match was a fairly broad way that we could get down that path, so.
We were just concerned on that because if the match didn't follow through, and with this new information, that kind of helps the process. We just wanted, the grant team wanted just to make the commission aware of that. The other question we had was the 10-year homeowner commitment, enforceability. So we have to continue to monitor, well, actually that's a different question. So the homeowner commitment, how do we confirm that the landowner is going to be committed to the 10-year time frame required on owning the property, basically? Do we attach it as a lien somehow, or attach it to the parcel to make sure that that 10-year commitment is met? Am I making sense?
And I guess it's already been done in other places in the state and stuff, so what's the will? It's already been invented, I guess.
So
There is none. And that's the thing that we need to take into consideration, is that there's millions of dollars coming out for these hazard fuel reduction projects specific to wildland urban interface areas. In those areas that are adjoined or neighboring to Bureau of Land Management and the Forest Service lands. So what they want to do is make sure that we're doing hazard mitigation activities within these areas, and so there's not a lot of enforcement and mandates to follow through, specifically like the matching requirements. And that's where IDL will come back in and write them into the grant itself to cover that, to protect the homeowners or the landowners, because they want to have these mitigation projects completed. As far as the enforcement, to go back on the 10-year application to make sure it's maintained, it's self-protecting and from a group perspective, because it's adjacent to the BLM and the Forest Service, and then they all work together to oversee what's going on. There's never been any enforcement to put those things in place, because the end result is going to be the mitigation, which minimizes the dollar loss and the impacts to the homeowners, the landowners, and everybody else. Does that make sense?
So it says you have to have it, but they're not going to enforce it if you don't.
Yes, and if there's any issues, the questions, concerns go back to the Idaho Department of Lands, and that's where Tyler says, if you have issues, let me know, because I can work those issues in and resolve them. Because at the end of the day, what we want to do is complete these projects.
Right.
So I guess as long as you're good with that.
Well, that was an area of discussion at the NACO conference this week. They talked about that a little bit when I went to one of the meetings, and there's a lot more pushed in the coming years for these type of projects to help mitigate that. And that's a big part of the Farm Bill, is creating those good neighbor agreements to help mitigate those things. So I think Wes is correct on that, that as long as we're doing our part to get it started and get it clean, that everybody will be happy.
The last question was just the compliance for monitoring for 10 years, but that's probably the same response of, we were worried about who was going to do that, but if they're not going to enforce it, as long as the commission's good with the risk that if it's not done, nothing will come back on the county.
What's the risk? I mean, if it isn't done, what is our exposure?
Well, if they don't maintain it, then it's no longer mitigating wildfire. But maintaining it benefits the landowner the most. So it's probably just an education thing. If they don't know what's going on, if they bought the new property and they're new landowners, they don't realize that there was all this work done. You just go in there, educate them. Oh, I just need to mow it every season? Okay.
But who's going to do that?
And yeah, that'd be them.
My question on that is, could our project manager be the one that just on an annual basis go back and drive through and take a look at stuff and then make recommendations?
Yes.
They could, but you're looking at a 10-year contract.
Right.
And the issues for enforcement, you guys are well of any issues from the county perspective for enforcement, it goes hand in hand with these type of projects. It's very, very difficult to enforce these type of activities.
I think that if we talk with the landowners, at least the original contracts and agreements, they're going to try to do their best. And I'm not going to say what's going to happen in 6 years down the road, but I think originally, and the whole purpose is that they can benefit on their property and have more grazing or whatever they want to utilize it for. So I think the landowners are going to graze it. They're going to try to cooperate the best that they can.
Maybe some of the initial discussions and education with the original property owners is just say, if you ever sell your property, then just let it be known that this is what we did and why. And there's probably no formal anything you can
And I don't think you
We
I
had
don't-
that discussion last night.
Yeah, and I don't think that doing any sort of a lien or anything would be enforceable.
And I wasn't trying to think of a lien, but like a covenant or a,
Yeah,
I don't
maybe.
know.
I think, how many properties are we talking about? Private property?
For these grants that are coming up, these applications, there are 4.
So
And one's a,
even if we put it on somebody's calendar here at the county, and every year annually, we send out, have Emma come up with some sort of a flyer that says, remember that in this year, this was done, and just a reminder that based on this grant, it's your due diligence to keep this maintained, then we've done something. And it's almost no cost.
Who are the parties to the contract?
the parties to the contract.
Yeah.
The county is contracted with the state, and then the county has an agreement with each landowner to do the work. And then the county is also contracted with CCOG for some administration, and then contracted with Joe McGuire, who's doing the on-site management of the work. He's going to check in on the contractor itself, creating the mapping. And then there will be another contract with a contractor to go out there and do the mulching.
So it sounds like the county is the party to most of the, a party to most of these contracts, not the individual landowners, except when they contract with us.
There was a different organization that used to do this in our area. and the county has taken it over to receive the administration funds out of this.
But we're really not just the fiscal agent, we're the one that's agreeing to the contract.
Correct.
Yes, but the one thing that hasn't mentioned, it's the landowner that identifies the need and the justification of need. So they're the ones coming out and saying, hey, we need some assistance with this fire mitigation. So that onus is built in because they're the ones coming forth saying, hey, we need some help. So it's not like the
And so we're
county-
contracting with these landowners for each of these four parcels we're talking about, right?
They can't get the grant by themselves to
Right.
do this work. So we're contracting with the state and then coming back and using those funds to contract with the landowners and the contractor to mulch the.
And all these contracts are being reviewed by our legal department, I would assume, or am I incorrect on that?
No, they've come through.
Mhm.
I mean, I've seen some come through. I mean, I assume you've seen all of them, but the ones that come to us, we look at, yeah.
We were just, as the grant team, we were just concerned that there were these 3 questions out there. We just wanted to make sure they were all resolved before we continued on. Right now, we've got 2 that we've accepted and are moving on. We've got 2 more, but there's a big push to continue to grow. So we figured head it off at the beginning to have all these questions answered, or at least the concerns presented before the board. And then if you're not concerned, we're not concerned.
We've been doing it, I think that we can move forward, is my opinion.
Yeah. I'm gonna let it go. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thanks for your time.
All right. Looks like Bannock County Veterans Memorial Building. Welcome. Please introduce yourselves. Give us your report.
Teresa Villalpando, the president of the Bannock County Veterans Memorial Association.
Miguel Dominic, the building historian.
And I'm Phil Clifton, Vice President of the Building Association.
Right, we are here this morning. Just wanted to give a quick update, the good and the bad, because we're looking at almost a 100-year-old building. So in the last year, we have had about 150 community events hosted at the building outside of our normal veteran organization events, outside of our steak nights, our breakfasts, our swap meets, whatever else we have going on. So we've hosted 26-ish weddings, birthdays, celebrations of life, a lot of political events. We've done a lot of work ourselves on the building to update and maintain and bring her back to the beauty that she is. A big project this last year we had the soffit and the fascia over the museum repaired. That was a big concern. Chunks of the ceiling or the roof were falling out. Up the windows in the upper ballroom we had fixed and updated. We put in a brand new flagpole. We are designated now as a historical building. And we got started with the window replacements, the energy efficiency for the building itself, which will help a lot. And we've updated some camera security issues within the building, and then just a lot of interior and exterior work, is like painting and staining and just organizing and cleaning up and making her beautiful again. So we've done a lot. This board is very, very dedicated to keeping this building up and running and being available for the community to use. We have fallen to 100 years of building stress in different areas. So I will turn this over to Miguel because we do have some big projects that we are trying to address with the building right now.
So I don't know exactly how to start on this, but I know John Crowder's kind of a little bit aware of it, but our roof has started leaking. And it's actually leaked into our crawl space, which eventually has, caused leaks onto the floor. I've reached out to 3 different restoration companies and roofing companies. We filed the claim. All these folders I have are the printouts and the photos of the damage that's going on there. And
The walls.
oh yeah, and then some of the water that's been leaking from the top has actually run down along the brick, which has actually leaked into one of the rooms, the American Legion room, and then our back linen room. That wall is actually leaked to the point where the bottom, you literally could go up to it, and if you put your foot or fist through it, it kind of crumbles apart because of the water that's leaked in there. I've also reached back to Robinson Roofing. That roof was done in 2016, the one side, the men's side, and then in 2017, the roof over the DAR room was done. And here we are, in 2023, and the flashing, according to Robinson Roofing, he said that the flashing, the membrane from the mini vacs, or what do you call those things?
Mini split.
Mini splits that were put in, the hole that was put into their membrane, that's also part of the leaking, and then the repointing of the bricks. Some of the bricks up there, and in the photos, you can kind of see a lot clearer where the bricks actually have pretty good sizable holes in them. And they said that's also part of the water intrusion that's going into the building. We did reach out to the insurance company. They had a guy come out and inspect it. And the one problem that we're running into on filing the claim is that the insurance adjuster said that the results of the photo and what they got from Robinson Roofing did not look to be the result of a single snow storm or a water storm, and it looked to be more like long-term damage. She did mention that I guess if we had got up on the roof and shoveled off snow, maybe that might have prevented it. But that's kind of where we're sitting at. You want to?
Yep, so we're here today, obviously, just to give the update. We did talk with the insurance, and it is looking more and more like they are going to deny a claim to get these things addressed. So we may have to come back to you to ask for a little bit of assistance in getting these things taken care of, keeping the walls from the crumbling in, and then also the roof from falling in on our building. So, I mean, we've been doing what we can to, as a new board, we've come in and we've been doing what we can to get her updated, to, keep her beautiful, but sometimes the work is way beyond what we can do ourselves, and in this case, it is way beyond what we can do ourselves. So, again, updating you on just kind of what's going on with it, but also a heads up that we may have to ask for some money.
And these are things that have been there, but we're just finding out they're there. By all of a sudden, we've got a room that's got leaks coming from the ceiling. By the time you look and find out where it's at, all being homeowners, if it leaks over here, it drips over here. So a lot of these leaks that are coming from the tuck pointing and all the things have run down the rafters even to other places. We were not even made aware that these were there until we started doing some other interior things in the rooms and realized it was more than just a masking of whatever the damage was inside. It went beyond that. It went all the way up into the roof. And the roof coverage was done, but we don't know whether Robinson did what is now leaking or whether what he did didn't take hold. So we're kind of in that discussion too.
And I'd also like to add to that, because I'm the guy that's there at that building every day as the building historian. And I see like pretty much everything that's going on in that building, and I've also seen all the emails, and not to sound like, you know, we're pointing fingers or putting any blame on anybody, but in researching the roof and then looking back at the old emails, we're a new board that took over, you know, for the previous board. I know in looking at the emails that this has been addressed before. It's been addressed before. The repointing of the bricks has been brought up. In fact, that was brought up with the county. I remember when I took over, I came to the county about the repointing of the bricks, getting that done. But at that time, we were told that the previous board did it incorrectly and didn't get, like, you know, 3 bids. And so that was kind of kicked back. And then even then, we would had to redo the whole repointing, because that was before COVID when the guy came out. So it increased, you know, the price when we went back to him. And we're trying to, we as a new board are trying to catch up on stuff from the old board that should have been addressed, that just was kind of neglected. And now it's, you know, getting to this point where that roof has become what it is today.
Christie, how much have we put into this building in budget last year?
We put in $150,000 to do the windows. That was going to be split for multiple years. And then we put in $30,000 for general maintenance and repairs. And I'm looking right now to see how much we've spent to date. And it's super slow coming up.
Okay.
Sorry. We've only spent $8,700 of the $30,000, but I'm working on the
Windows.
capital, how much we've done. And do you have all of those projects done, so all the money is spent that's?
Precision Glass has come in and they've done the lower windows on the in the DAR room, but they still have to come back, do the moon windows on that side, and then they'll come back on that next year to do the windows in the men's meeting room.
Okay.
The weather slowed them down quite a bit.
A couple of things. I know the county has some responsibility for maintenance there, but you as a board have some responsibilities too. You said you had 150 events.
Mhm.
The county is very limited on the funds that we have. So that means the way to get more money is your events. So,
And the events don't like generate like a ton of money if you look at, like, you know, like the building rentals. But I know we've hashed up ideas where we could go outside of that and seek, you know, like, because now we're actually a historical building. I did talk to Boise, and they said that as an historical building, we can apply for grants, and those grants would only be for, like, specifically for repairs. Like, it does mention
maintenance and upkeep.
maintenance, the repointing of the bricks. So those are other options that we could pursue.
Yes, and fundraising on our own. We understand that what we're looking at is going to be a lot of money, and we don't want to take it from the taxpayers, but at the same time, I mean, it's a 100-year-old building, and there's a lot more, like I said, that we can do on our own in order to keep her from falling in on herself, essentially.
yeah. Well,
I don't show that we've paid any of the bills for the windows yet.
No, because they haven't, Precision hasn't completed
Okay, so
the
they're,
windows, that's
okay.
why.
I didn't know if they'd be giving you progressive billings.
Yeah,
or-
yeah, no,
okay.
he said he was gonna do that when they were all done, because they're waiting for the moon roof windows, or the moon-shaped windows.
Do you
You ever
think-
seen it has the half-moon windows?
mhm.
And they have to specially make that glass, and then they're making the spider webbing that would fit on it, as opposed to making each little piece of glass.
Do you think you guys are gonna need all 150,000 to pay for those items that you already have?
Those windows, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, and we saved money too on those windows, because I don't know if you guys, I know some of you have been in the building, but the moon, those half-moon windows that are in there, if we had went with the original historical look of the building, it would have been it would have cost a lot more because those are all individual panes of window. So we just asked Precision if they could just get a half-moon window, duplicate the template of the wood that's on there, and then just put that over the top of the windows. Because it's like, no one's really gonna notice that there's 10, 15 pieces of glass in there as opposed to like a template, so.
These windows, being energy efficient, are really gonna cut our expense in heating and cooling throughout the year.
Yeah, because those were single pane windows in there, and especially those moon windows, some of those pieces you could actually lift out and see right through the outside.
Yeah. Yeah, and we've eliminated the building manager and the salary and taxes that go along with that from the budget. Miguel's there every single day as a volunteer, so we are not paying out that much. 30,000-ish, I think, having a building manager there. So not paying that out has saved, like I said, we are trying to do what we can on our own, and trying to save and trying to fundraise. A lot of our events, like you were saying, generate funds, but a lot of it is open to first responders and veterans, military related, and schools, nonprofits, and they all pay a very, very reduced rate. And we are already very much on a reduced rate if you compare us to all the other venues in this area. We do try to allow people to be able to do fundraiser and host events, like the schools and the veteran organizations, without having to worry so much about the price, being able to be there for the community. But there aren't a whole lot of full-priced events that do come through. So as much as we do have events coming in, a lot of them are not very profitable, I guess you could say.
Well, we do the same thing at the event center.
Mm-hmm.
We subsidize a lot of things, but the county can't afford to subsidize every building in the county.
And to go along with what she said, with the prices being low for the building rentals, I know when I went through the history of that, when they established that building, it not only being a building for the veterans, but it was also designed for the community. And I think that's why a lot of the building rentals, the pricing is so much lower, because it was designed for people that, maybe could get a venue that wasn't quite as expensive as another place that was maybe $1,500 or something like that.
But that's where I'm saying you as a board will have to decide that, because there's still got to be upkeep on the building.
Right.
Yep.
On this window project, I seem to recall that was spread out over 5 years. Am I right on that? Does anyone remember that?
It's multiple years.
Yes.
But I can't remember.
Yeah, the first year they were only going to do the top.
So we're really looking at, if you prorate that, we're looking at about 30,000 per year was going to be spent on this window project, or am I wrong on that?
It's 150 a year, but for multiple years, right?
Yes.
150 per year?
Yeah.
Okay, well, I had a gross misunderstanding there then.
Yes,
Good trying to find money.
nauseating. Yes.
All right, I thought we saved all this money.
Yeah.
Live and learn.
Yeah, no, it's a lot, and we understand that, and we know where the money from the county comes from. And we, like I said, we would love to be able to do as much as we can, and we are doing as much as we can within the scope of volunteer abilities. But I mean, when you're talking about crumbling foundation and a roof coming in, that's way beyond our scope. So we are working with the insurance. We're trying to figure out how much of that can be covered.
They're not going to cover it.
I know.
They're not going to cover it.
That's why we're here, just in case.
If we poked holes in the membrane, that means that something's happened and we've allowed moisture in there.
And we're still using an old boiler system in that building, but luckily we're actually saving quite a bit, because I've had the boiler people come look at that thing, and they said that the way we maintain it every single week, that thing will last for years to come, and currently does not need to be replaced.
We have one in the courthouse too.
Yep. Yeah. So that's what I say. We're doing everything that we possibly can to maintain it on our very own level. But
well, and I'll just tell you that what we need from you is you need to identify the projects, the monies that you need, where your share is, what's going on, in order to have any conversation further on this.
And we will be doing, budget is coming up pretty quick, so we'll be sending out budget sheets in the middle of April. Don't know if this project can wait that long, but that's an option.
And
Start working on
that was one concern that I was wondering too with the roof, that if we like let that sit, like, you know, the way it is now, with what's going on up there, like from these photos, water, every time we get snow or heavy rainstorm, it's still leaking in, and when it does get like a heavy rainstorm, that ends up, you know, dripping down into the ballroom, because there's been a couple events we've done where people have called us and said, hey, your roof is like leaking into the ballroom floor. So I don't know, I mean, I've got like companies that have come out and looked, but then the further we let it sit, the more damage it causes to the wood that's inside the upper building.
And we understand that.
Yeah.
It wasn't budgeted, so we don't have a magic tree.
We own a lot of property in Bannock County that are just not a magic tree for.
I haven't found it yet, but I've only been here 4 years.
Okay. Yep, nope, that was just our update, the good stuff that we have going on. The number of events that we have coming through, and then, the bad stuff that comes along with it being almost 100 years old, so.
Well, and we've all been over there, and we enjoy the breakfast and the activities, and we appreciate the board and everything they're doing.
And I do know that repointing of the bricks that I mentioned, that was brought up to the commissioners before, that original repointing of the bricks would not have addressed the problem with the bricks that were on top, because that's the main thing that's causing the problem, is those bricks on the roof. So that original bid that the old board came to you with, it wouldn't have addressed.
It was to repoint
The
the
front of
west
the
side
building.
main entrance,
Yeah.
so it looked better.
Yeah.
But it didn't talk about anything about above the roof where all the tuck pointings. You can go up and put your finger in the.
Well, and that's what I say, we're looking at the different projects. $150,000 a year for windows is quite a bit of money, in my opinion. But each one of these projects is, you come and present to us on budget time too. But I'm just telling you that our budget, we're pretty tight with it, and see where things go.
We'll work on it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, I just want to commend the board and the people that are working there right now, because you guys have really been very proactive in trying to make improvements. I'm not happy to hear that we have all this damage, but I am happy to hear that you guys are looking at this, you're investigating what the issues are, and you're addressing them now, and not letting them continue to go on, so that the cost becomes $1 million a year for windows or something like that. I'm also very impressed that you have put the museum in. That museum's a fantastic addition. I know that you've got the school kids have been coming through there and now being taken advantage of this, and being able to learn about our history and our veterans, which I think is a very positive thing for the community. So, and the third thing is that you guys are looking at different fundraising options. I know you guys have been reviewing your what you charge for the different events and so on. So I feel like you guys are moving a very proactive way, and I'm very happy to see that. And so I just want to commend you on the work you're doing.
And if you guys would like to use the building, we'll give you a special rate.
Okay, with that, thank
Is
you.
it only double or triple?
And we're not gonna raise the price of breakfast. We did it once already, we're not gonna raise it again.
And we got quite a crowd here right now, but the first Saturday of every month,
Yeah.
7 o'clock to
Yep.
8 to 11.
8 to 11.
8 till 11.
Yeah, I got that
You
down.
can't buy a better breakfast for the price in
That's
town.
right.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Move Braden to the end.
I did.
With ARPA.
I thought that was your fault.
He's not on, he did not get his stuff in.
And that's ready. That's in there. And I don't think we won't have a discussion with him today. Dave, you're not on my agenda. So are you here to talk about stipends? Okay, and that's not on the agenda today.
Why not?
Well, I don't know. I thought it was going to be, but it's not there.
Isn't this it right now?
No,
That's something else?
that's Braden's.
Okay.
That's not about it.
internal.
That's our
Okay.
conflicts.
Mhm.
So I'm just telling you, it's not on the agenda, so we can't talk about it today.
Okay.
So-
You submitted it a while ago.
Well, I'm just, we'll figure out why and what later, but I just see you sitting there,
Okay.
and it's not on the agenda, so,
All right.
thank you. I just didn't want you sitting there for longer if you,
Yeah.
because I just looked over
It's been
it.
on my calendar all week, so I
Okay,
assumed that it had been placed there.
okay, thank you. All right, Scott.
Good morning, Commissioners.
Good
Scott
morning.
Cutler, Event Director, Business Manager.
Kyle Burmester, Bannock County Public Works.
And before we jump into discussion with Kyle, I'd like to have Hal, if you don't mind, come up. Are you good? So we have a contract to discuss the Bob Conley International cross-country meet that we've held for several years up at the facility. Doug Hopster, who usually comes and talks about that, is sick today and cannot do so. So I can either present this contract as it sits, or we can wait till he can be here to be part of that discussion. It's your call on that one.
Okay. It is something that we've signed multiple times.
Mhm.
Did you have any concerns with the
No, we've
cross-country?
done this one before.
John?
No.
So I'll let it slide one time that he's not here.
Okay.
Since they're-
He has a very good excuse. I'm sure he could pull a doctor's note.
I'll just send if somebody's sick, they're not
Yeah.
presenting. So, motion or questions on this contract?
Mr. Chair, I make a motion that we approve the Bob Connolly agreement as presented.
We have a motion, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Great. So next, I want to just talk a little bit about the indoor arena and kind of what's going on up there. And then that will kind of lead into a discussion on equipment. So probably 6 weeks ago or so, maybe a little bit more than that, the fire suppression sprinkling system that was in there froze solid. There's no way for us to heat that building. There's no way for us to defrost it. So we silenced the alarms. And then about a week later, we had a frost, and that system burst at several of the junction points. And it ran for about an hour before we turned it out. We were able to get it turned off. It's a little bit chaotic in there trying to figure out how to shut that thing down when it's just pouring water out. I know I was there. So, but in that time, it put a lot of water into that indoor arena. Within the next day or two, it froze solid. We worked really hard to pump out as much of the water as we could, but it still has it's just really made a big mess of the arena. Last week on Tuesday, ISU students moved back in, and they have that as part of their contract to rent that arena. We've also had rentals for roping events that should have started last week. And we have not been able to get the arena kind of flipped around. And that leads a little bit into the equipment discussion. The ground is frozen solid right now. We were able to get a small bulldozer in there and do some ripping around, but we still have some really large chunks of frozen dirt. We are pretty confident if we can actually get it to break down the dirt into smaller clumps that we could turn it into rideable dirt and get the arena back to use. But we have a lot of people that have paid for riding passes. We do a 6-month riding pass during the winter. We've had people contacting us asking for refunds on the water or on the riding passes, and we do have some concerned patrons, ISU, and our contracted folks as they are canceling their events too. And so there's a handful of different discussions. I've asked Hal to come up here to talk about the sprinkling system in there in general. If you want to talk about that.
Paul Jensen, Planning Director, Bannock County. Previously, prior to this position, having practiced architecture, had a relatively extensive knowledge of how the code functions and how it works. Give you some quick background. That particular facility is defined as an assembly area. Any assembly area over X number of occupants requires a fire sprinkling system. The structure in itself is what's referred to as a tensile structure or tent structure. So therefore, as Scott mentioned, it's difficult to provide heating and cooling in that. It's just basically to keep weather out for all intents and purposes. I don't know much about that particular system when it was installed, how it was built. I'm making two general assumptions. It was either one, a dry system, or two, a glycol system. My gut instinct is that it was a dry system. Any dry system requires maintenance because those pipes will condense and therefore water will stand in the pipes. Okay? If those are not drained on an annual basis, and nothing against Scott, I'm assuming that no one's ever done any training on how that system functions, the condensation sat and sat and sat, and because of the weather conditions that we had at the very first long sustained freeze, therefore the freeze, therefore the leaks, and therefore for some reason the system charged if it was a dry system, and Scott dealt with the issue that he's dealing with. I went through the code extensively looking for any exceptions to not have a fire sprinkler system in that facility, and I cannot find one. And I know it's not what Scott wants to hear, but it's my recommendation that it basically be repaired and brought up to standard. At some point, it's either going to have to be studied for remaining as a dry system and training of the facilities people to know how to drain the system on a regular basis, prior to winter, to make sure condensate is out of the pipes, or a glycol system is installed. Glycol, of course, lowers the freezing temperature of the liquid that's in the pipes, and therefore it'll make it through the winter. I don't know that we have an option to abandon the system.
With the public in there in the system, I mean, there's not a lot to burn, but it's still, you're putting the public in there, and that'd be a big lawsuit.
And we do run into, we have events in the wintertime. We have seating there for about 300 people, but we also know that we have a lot of people sitting on horses. So we can't necessarily say that we don't have 500 people in there at any given time. I did do some research on winterization. It is a charge system. Glycol probably would be the better solution. Years ago, during a windstorm, it severed half of the sprinkling system. So the one half of the sprinkling system has not worked for many years. So we've had the half that kind of covers the bleachers has. The options for winterizing that system are to shut it down in the winter and drain it, which means we don't hold events in the wintertime. Or there's ways that you can throw some alcohol into the lines to help reduce that, but then that also doesn't help us if there's a fire and we send out alcohol. So I believe there is probably a solution out there for a fire suppression sprinkler in that, or system in that type of a building. With the wind and the flex that we get, we do run into some issues there. And then obviously having it freeze, rethaw is a big concern.
It's going to be a long-term maintenance issue, just for the simple fact that it's a tensile structure. It's a giant tent, and it has a lot of flexibility, and the sprinkler system is rigid. So therefore, you have two systems that want to fight against each other in the event of high winds or seismic activity or other forces that work on that structure. So
we're going to use the facility, we have to put a sprinkler system back in, plain and simple. But the right now point is, we're broke down. We can't utilize that facility then until we fix the sprinkler system.
Real quickly, you can use the facility for the floor, but you probably shouldn't use the facility for spectators.
Which typically the events that we have right now are not rodeo-style events. We won't have those until the summer. But they are like roping events where the majority of the people there are on horseback. And then the ISU, when they practice, it's their practice facility. Their rodeo is actually later in the summer.
Okay, I was just want that clarified. That
So for the types of events you're doing now, do we have to have a sprinkler system at the moment, or is this for the summer?
I think this is more for the summer. I mean, like, I've never counted people in there. I think the busiest I've ever seen it is during like a cow cutting event during high school rodeo, which there's a lot of people in the stands and there's a lot of people on horseback kind of watching.
Is the cutoff 500 people for having a sprinkler system?
Yes, yes. And so I would say
So if we have
there's
the
a
public in there?
handful, there's a handful of occasions that we hit that 500 person mark, but I just can't say that a rodeo couldn't, because depending on the rodeo, it can get crazy in there.
So let me clarify that. If we have people in the spectators in the stands, can we, is it the 500 limit, or is it just any, we have spectators?
I believe it's above 500.
Okay,
500 or more.
okay.
Okay, well that's, so it sounds like without repairing the sprinkler system, you can get events up and running now. Okay, and so that would alleviate at least part of the problem in the near term. And with this glycol system you're talking about, you said that reduces the freezing point. What is that?
It reduces the freezing temperature.
To
Yes.
what?
I don't know how glycol works, Commissioner. I just know that for most systems, like for instance, you'll end up with a split system on a building that has a canopy, and the canopy on the exterior is required to be sprinkled. So the interior of the building is basically a water system, and the exterior that has the potential to freeze is glycol. And I don't know what that freezing temperature is.
They use it in sidewalks too.
Correct.
So it sounds like there is not a lot of time, but there is some time to do a little bit more research on this and to compare the different potential solutions, the costs of the potential solutions, and I'm sure there must be plenty of other venues that have similar issues. Probably wouldn't be a bad idea to investigate and see if someone else has come up with some unique solution we haven't thought of.
For sure. Yeah, I can look around. I've been in a handful of arenas, probably not the same size as our indoor arena, but you typically just don't see sprinkling systems in the in the arenas.
It's the spectator component that pushes the sprinkler system.
Well, so we take out some bleachers.
That's a solution.
Well, we only have enough bleachers for 300 people in there right now. I mean, and we've never gone around and counted people on horseback. I mean, we just, again, any number that we have, I'm estimating, right? I'm estimating these numbers. We've never counted.
So we may not, for all we know, we are not going over 500. You think we might be, but maybe we're
I
not.
believe we may be, but I can't say with any sort of certainty that we are going over 500.
But we have spectator seating for 300.
Yeah.
Well,
Take out
I
some
think,
bleachers.
I think it's a discussion that we need to have about that too.
Okay. And I did talk with Human Resources about maybe an I-crimp claim because of the weather that caused this issue. If we feel that is a direction to go. The reality is that, you know, the sprinkling system broke at the joints, right? I mean, they're designed to break. So, but anytime we have any service done on that system, it is extremely expensive. The quote I got to pull down one half, it was well over $100,000.
Well, let's put a claim in, and all they can do is deny it.
So.
Or approve it.
Or approve it, yeah. I mean,
Or approve it.
so.
Awesome. Well, that is half of it. The
And
other
then
half.
equipment you need to use or utilize, like I
So-
told you the other day, I know people need training on some dozers and stuff. If we haul some stuff in there and we have a covered arena to train people and make sure that they're trained on their jobs.
Most of the
Utilize
equipment
we have.
Most of the equipment that we have that we use on a regular basis, there's really probably two pieces of equipment that fall out of what it would be reasonable for us to purchase or even rent. We use a grader. We've got the grader. It's a 39-year-old grader that we got from Road and Bridge several years ago, and we use it probably 15 times a year. When we took it down to fix the arena, we blew a rod in the grader, and so it is a valuable tool for us for the jobs that we need. We have a lot of events up at the grandstands. We'll hold rodeos up there. We have races up there. We have monster trucks up there. Anytime we convert the track from a racetrack to a rodeo, we'll go in and rip it because people will drive on the track. And so there's probably maybe 15 times a year that we use a grader. Typically, we use it, it could be at 8 o'clock at night, it could be later, right? We have a few times we grade out our arenas. We got a bid back to replace the motor in our current grader. That bid is $41,000. And that's also to replace a 40-year-old piece of equipment, the motor in a 40-year-old piece of equipment. And we love that grader. It's fantastic. We don't need anything crazy, but that is a lot of money for it. I pulled some rental costs for us to rent a grader just each day. It's $1,500 a day to rent a grader. And so if we look at the 15 days a year we'd use a grader, it would be roughly $22,000 a year in rental fees to rent a grader. One of the things that, and I think it's a great change that we have made as a county, is we've gone to leasing vehicles, specifically high dollar vehicles like graders. So there's really not a chance of us getting a grader, a used hand-me-down grader anymore either, because the graders get turned back in. And I would say it's not worth us buying a grader for the event center, although like those 15 times a year I need it. But I don't think it's worth the value. Kyle and I have talked a little bit about equipment, and Road and Bridge has been very gracious to us anytime we've had equipment failures during an event and we need something quick. They've let us borrow water trucks. And we've talked a little bit about it. They've let us use like a front end loader to help with certain projects that we've used. And so Kyle and I have talked a little bit about trying to find a solution. And I'll speak to Kyle as far as like how I'll turn the time over to Kyle to talk a little bit about how we may be able to accomplish those things working together.
Like I told him, we looked at it, and most of the use he'll have is in summertime, where we should have a grader available, but like you said, the only concern I had was training in some of these pieces of equipment. Kind of the same thing we do in our departments. You have your training before you're running that equipment. Some of this is specialized equipment, and we want to take care of the county property, and so we're looking at, that he could use just one of the Road and Bridge graders once we had one or two of his employees trained to check all the fluids and operate it correctly.
I have no problem with that.
And there's a big difference. We've got one of our employees, a few of our employees that can operate the grader. I mean, I can run the rippers on the grader, no problem. But as far as actually grading with it, there's a few of our employees that can run it. But the grader we have now they call it like a piano. It's got a million keys, a million things that you've got to do. The new graders are not like that. They're not at all like that. So I think the training is the only way. I don't know any of us that would feel comfortable doing it. And like I said.
So you're not going to invite the commissioners up on a Friday to grade? Dang.
You'll have to talk to Kyle about that. If you attend the training and get certified, I'll let you come up and rip some tracks. I'm okay with that.
I used to plow the streets in Aiken with a grader.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and then the only other real piece of equipment that we have that I see a potential long-term issue with is our water truck. We use our water truck multiple times a day. We put a lot of hours on it, not a lot of miles on it. We're running our water truck a ton. Our water truck is specifically, like, the sprayers are designed for what we do. It's fantastic. It works great. When we switch out water trucks, it changes things up a little bit, but we're still able to accomplish our job. But the truck itself is extremely old, and right now it's in the shop having some major work done on it. I think that it's my hope, and talking to the guys in the shop, that we can get it running for this year again. And then maybe this is a discussion we can have. We can push this off to budget time or something like that.
And then along them lines, the government surplus, I know that there's a lot of agencies, that military agencies, that get rid of stuff. And we got to get on that list of looking that up. I know City of Income just went to Oregon and picked up a truck. And I know they picked up a Bobcat or a skid steer under the same situation. So we need to be looking at those things on a constant basis. If we can pick something up for, a third or a tenth of the price.
And we feel that like the tank and the motors would be great if we can find a chassis to throw it on. And I know Kyle every now and again does rotate some of his dump trucks through, and so there is a possibility that we could, through normal rotation, we could possibly pull one of the dump trucks. And that, again, we're talking about putting a much newer truck on top of a current, at least our water truck on the tank on the chassis, which would help us out a ton. So,
yeah, some of them would work pretty good for that. The hard thing is what we're seeing is, like, take 10-wheeler trucks. If we've got 42 of them, 10 of them are under 20 years. The other 30 are over 20 years old. So it's hard when we think they're an okay truck, but some of the stuff we're trying to help out and pass down somewhere, it's already worn out. So that's what some of the equipment he's getting. So until we kind of get that updated a little bit more, then there could be a turnover that would be worth it.
and water trucks in general, a lot of construction companies no longer buy water trucks because they just don't have the value. People rent them a lot. A rental cost on a water truck is about $6,000 a month for a water truck rental, and so a lot of places will just rent their water trucks. And so finding used water trucks is tough. Finding a used chassis might be the better thing, but anything like that, I would have to refer to our folks in Road and Bridge. They know those machines a lot better than we do. So we just want to make sure whatever we got is going to last us for a long time.
Well, on a new one, if you could get deals like you're talking about, a new one's over 250,000. So.
Yeah. And this is, like I say, this is some more discussion that we'll have during budget time. But so come up with some options for us.
Well, I most certainly will. Our big thing is just, we'll have to see what happens as they dig into the water truck. I think that my fingers are crossed because these guys are trying to knock out a big project for us. It's, like I said, it's a fantastic
Well,
piece of equipment.
it's changed a little too, because at one point we thought the water truck was gonna be a massive fix, yeah, and it might not be, so that's kind of changed things a little. So we were just brainstorming, trying to figure out what we could do. One of the options, like I say, is you could take an older dump truck, put that tank on it, and have that ready to go if we needed to for this year.
Now, if this is something that we can get it fixed for a few $1,000s or whatever, that's great. But like if it's a major overhaul, like the differential is completely shot and we have to send it out, now you're talking about a substantial cost to have that fixed.
So the $40,000 for repairing the grader. Hold off on it?
I think give us a little more time to see for sure what the value of that machine is, and maybe it is worth it to do 40,000. I don't know.
But right now you have an option of using.
Right now, I think
for a limited
our
time.
best option is to just utilize already county equipment.
Okay.
We'll have to have that figured out how that works and stuff like that. But
And then going back to these individuals that have contracts with us on the facility. If they're I think that we evaluate and maybe refund the month of February. I mean, if
So the riding pass is a one-time fee. It is for the season. My hope was that we could get the thing turned this week. I felt like if we could get it turned this week, that we would be able to say, look, we did provide, we have the little covered arena that's up by the racetrack. We have allowed people to go up there and ride in
okay,
that.
so they've been able to be
Yeah,
under.
so if we turned it quickly, I felt like we could just say, sorry for the inconvenience, it's back,
Okay.
right?
I have no problem with that.
So, but if we wait too long, I would, maybe I'll come and present maybe a different solution on that. Maybe people that request a refund or people that haven't, maybe we can apply that towards next year's riding pass or something along those lines. But I most certainly don't want some of the people that are our customers to start looking for other venues, because we have some people that have been working with us for a long time that spend a lot of money on our facilities that we want to keep coming back. So,
Okay.
and I'll just work with Kyle if that's okay to try to find solutions for that. If that's okay.
Yep. Thank you.
I want to just reiterate something that Commissioner Moser said earlier. When I went and looked at and met with Mayor Schaefer in Ingham, and I was very impressed with how they're able to take advantage, or have been able to take advantage of this government surplus to get equipment. We really need to be looking at that. There are some, they have gotten some very good deals on that, so.
I don't know if you'd even know, how does that work with our procurement process? Because we're talking about probably.
We'll
something
figure it
to be-
out. If they're gonna get, if we can get free equipment or 10% equipment, we'll
For
figure
sure.
out how to make it work.
Okay. Definitely looking.
City's under the same requirements we are.
They are. Maybe we could call Max and see how they did it. So, all
probably be
right,
a
thank
good
you very
idea.
much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Emma?
Good morning, Commissioners. Emma Iannacone, Public Information Officer. I'm joined by Kyle. Do you want to introduce yourself?
Kyle Burmester, Bannock County Public Works.
And Cynthia from City of Pocatello.
Hi, Cynthia Delmeyer, City of Pocatello.
And we're here to bring forward the issue of sponsorship for the Portneuf Valley Enviro Fair. In years past, we have sponsored $1,000 for the Enviro Fair. That money goes to organizing and promoting the fair and paying for musical guests, materials for the kids area, lots of fun different things as well. We have a booth there usually for Public Works for the landfill, mosquito abatement, and noxious weed. This year I'm working with Wes, our emergency manager, to have a booth for the Office of Emergency Management to promote our Alert Sense emergency notifications, as well as the Family Emergency Preparedness Guide. Our sponsorship, the last time we sponsored was in 2020, but because of the pandemic, the fair had been canceled for 2 years, correct? So that sponsorship carried over to the 2022 fair. I believe if we decide to not go forward with sponsorship, we would have to pay $35 registration per booth, correct?
It could end up being 50, but 35.
Okay. This year, Public Works has budgeted $4,000 in their line item for education and public relations. We dropped using New Wave Marketing to handle our advertising for Household Hazardous Waste Days, and I've taken over that responsibility, and I'm working with a radio station to run some ads for that. I've gotten a quote back, and that would be $2,100 for those radio ads. So we're saving significant amounts compared to the $11,000 that we were paying. But that still leaves some money left over in that line item for education and public relations. So I thought if the commission is interested in moving forward with our sponsorship, that could be the line item that we would pay for that out of.
Good. Questions? Comments?
Kyle, you feel like it's a worthwhile event?
Yeah, I think it's an awesome event. We have our drone there for mosquitoes. We get to tell them about hazardous waste stuff. It's a great way to have public outreach for a minimal thing, and I think it's a good idea to do it.
Last year they had 5,000 attendees, correct? And it was Easter weekend and bad weather, so hopefully this year.
Yeah, it was crazy last weekend, but we will never move it inside ever again. That was chaos. But it really is a great turnout. Yeah.
I think Emma's did a great job of working on this too, and like she said, we've been saving a lot of money on other kind of advertisements and stuff like that, so.
In the past, we've split that cost among the different participants. So if Noxious and Mosquito were going to go, shouldn't we charge them a portion instead of just making landfill pay it all?
Yeah, we can break it out.
Would you also like to include emergency management in that, since they'll also have a booth this year?
Then he should probably pay his
Yeah,
part too.
yeah, we'll just take that bill and break it between the departments.
Okay.
Okay.
Motion, comments?
I think it's a good idea, so I'm all about public relations. So, Mr. Chair, I make a motion that we approve the sponsorship of $1,000 for the environmental fair.
We have a motion, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All right.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
How?
See you at the environmental fair. Yes,
Hmm.
April 22nd. Oh, absolutely. Definitely gonna enjoy my walk outside.
Al Jensen, Planning Director, Bannock County. Have with me Dan Kendall, Facilities Manager. You have in front of you a contract for time and materials, mechanical engineer, engineered systems to work through the mechanical and plumbing design on the jail retrofit. We are at a standstill until mechanical design is put in place. Everything's been forwarded to the mechanical contractor. Levi is waiting for a telephone call from the mechanical engineer to start those conversations and move that design forward. Mechanical engineer is waiting for a signed contract before he picks up the telephone.
Okay.
Welcome to how the...
Levi, you're more than welcome. Come up, participate if you want. Your name keeps coming up, might as well have you on the camera.
The contract is similar to the others that we have in place with other consultants for the rebuild of this boiler room project. So I was taken aback at current rates, but they are what they are.
Yeah. But
It's my
we
recommendation.
can't be in a standstill either. We gotta get moving.
It's my recommendation that the contract is approved, time and materials. The item that comes with the recommendation is that this is the original design engineer of the facility to begin with. And so they have some level of knowledge and intimacy, as well as working with Rocky Mountain Boiler, who is doing the work for the rebuild on the boilers, et cetera, and other support infrastructure.
Questions?
Levi, you agree? Dan?
It's the way to move forward. We got to get going on it. So.
You both shook your heads this way. Is it this way?
Yes. Whatever it takes to move forward, yes.
Okay. John, any questions?
No. Mr. Chair, I make a motion that we approve this professional services agreement with Engineering System Associates as presented.
We have a motion, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right, Dan, stay there.
And Christie is gone, but how soon would a copy be available to take to the consultant?
Take it down right now to Christie. Everybody signed it? Let's give it to you.
Thanks, Al. Appreciate it.
I think Tim did.
All right.
You're up.
So, Dan Kendall, Facilities Director.
Ashley Ford, Maintenance Technician.
Danny Weber, Assistant Facility Director.
Todd Mauger, Juvenile Probation. We'll start off with just the general monthly update for maintenance. Again, number one's been snow removal. Been a battle this year. We haven't had any significant repairs to report. I think everything seems to be going smoothly. We just helped Carrie Hong and Brandy move up to the 3rd floor, so they're out of the construction zone. This past weekend, we had our annual fire inspection, so they checked the alarms, the smoke detectors, and the fire extinguishers, and that all went fairly well. We had a couple of repairs to do, but they checked the backflow, and we didn't pass that one. So they're going to fix that, and we'll be up and rolling. So they do that every year. We do it on President's Day weekend because they set the alarms off, and it's a noisy time. And another update on maintenance, we're looking into some training opportunities for Ashley and Whitworth. Ashley's looking into some Excel training, and Whitworth is looking into some boiler certification. So that'll be a good thing we need to accomplish this spring and this summer. So, on courtroom 218, we passed our framing inspection with the city of Pocatello. We just finished up the drywall install and the plywood. So we're waiting on the wood molding. It's here in Pocatello. It's getting stained. So we're actually moving a little quicker than I anticipated with that part of it.
It's looking pretty good over there.
Yeah, it's I think the construction world is slowing down a little bit, so we're getting a lot quicker response on our subcontractors. So I'm happy with how that's going. The other big project is the Safe Teen Center, so I wanted Todd here to talk about that. We have submitted the building permit application with the City of Pocatello. I think we're picking up a check today, so we'll get moving forward with that process. They don't like to move too quick until they have some money in their hands, so that's happens every time. The demolition at the Safe Teen Center is complete. Roofing contractor has been found. I found actually a pretty promising 3rd bid, so I'm excited about that. But today we're here to talk about the stucco. So we talked about the water damage from the faulty roof. We found a contractor. He's ready to go if we want to approve some money. It sounds like it's about $27,000 to do the repairs, and it's actually going to recoat the entire building because there's so many spots to repair. We don't want to look like a bunch of patches. So he says we could pick our own color, recoat it, fix, remove and replace the especially bad parts. But anyways, we wanted to talk with Christy Clauser and you guys to approve some money to move forward with that. And I'm sure Todd will have an update for us on that kind of thing.
Well, and then this is kind of the discussion that we had the other day. Is some of these, I mean, 25,000 is not small, but it's smaller. And to keep the progress going, we kind of identified some funds to have there in the pool. So I'd still leave that to your discretion as we've identified funds already.
Yeah, and Dan did come down and make sure he ran through the 27,000 and said, I told him the direction the board had gone through was go ahead and use ARPA money.
Yeah, yeah.
I think he was just wanting that confirmation from you guys that yes, it's okay to do it.
But yeah, we did that at board meeting last week, and so.
Yeah, I have one question on this, Christy.
Mm-hmm.
Is this portion of the ARPA money part of the 7 million that's for specific uses, or is it part of the 10 million for general?
That will need to work out.
Okay.
We're going to identify everything we can for the specific.
Right.
And that'll be the first that goes off the plate.
Gotcha.
And then we'll come back and utilize whatever we can, is my opinion.
And we're really close on identifying the 7 million. I just need to be able to meet with Brian to confirm that he agrees on which expenditure code area we can use it for.
And then I guess we'll get a report on that as soon as you guys have figured that out.
It'll probably be part of the discussion if we have time before 11, if not afterwards maybe.
It's going to be after, because we got to have the time to spend on it. So.
I've got everything identified. I just need the board to say, do this and which code area or which expenditure code, and then I just do the reporting.
The fun part.
Todd wanted to update us on possibly leasing some offices to the state on that same building.
So in talking to Commissioner Huff a little while ago, he looked at the plans and,
Okay, this isn't on the agenda.
okay.
So if we're gonna make a decision.
Well, there's no decision, maybe just an update.
You wanna do a conversation right now?
A conversation.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah, just a conversation.
We're not on the agenda to,
Yeah, there's no decisions. I just kind of wanted to give a conversation, in talking with the Iowa Department of Juvenile Corrections. Their current lease, with the building they're in now is $15.14 per square foot. And they have about close to 900 square feet that they're currently leasing. In talking to them, they're gonna have to buy out, their lease because it goes through 2026. I'm talking with Jason Stone, well, he's not the director, but he's the one that I've been in contact with, and makes those decisions. He's been in contact with their chief financial officer, and they can buy out the lease. They're not sure on the monies on that. In looking at the two offices they wanted to lease, Dan, I could be wrong, we're about 300 square feet, and then in talking to him, he wanted to put in the use of the bathroom, break room, and access to one conference room that brings us to about 900 square feet, well, about 1,000 square feet.
Yeah.
And in talking to him, it sounded like they're looking at about $1,100 per month, but in the first year, and he doesn't have specific numbers, this is just a conversation we're having, because they're buying that lease out, and they've already got their budget set, they may need a kind of a reduction or a break the first year. And I told him I would have a conversation while he gets his numbers together, just so I have feedback as to directions on the conversations I should have with him and how I feel about leasing that space. When I talked to him also, having the district liaison in the office, I feel will be key because we're also serving those other counties. And I, in my capacity, my focus is gonna be on Bannock County, but he would be a key communicator and help with bringing those other counties' families and services together, if that makes sense. So I think it's a good fit, but I just wanted to kind of be aware of the directions we're going, and if there's certain things you want me to look for or ideas, I'm open to those things.
we always wanna recoup some funds if we can. I think that when you kind of get your game plan of what offices and where and stuff, we need to do a field trip and come over and look at it. So, like I said, I'm a visionary person, and I'd like to come over and look at it and kind of give our stamp of approval of kind of the directions and what's going on.
Yeah, I love the floor plan that we're working with. That's a super efficient use of the space. So the way it was put together, it provides a lot of flexibility on anything you want to do in there. So I'm excited. I hope to get the building permit the next week. And while we're waiting for that molding to show up in courtroom 218, we can get started on the framing. So. Okay.
Good.
Moving on from that, cleaning contractor recently took over 4 more buildings. I've got some positive feedback already. Sure makes our life a lot easier using those guys, and they do good work. Probably don't need the van that we acquired recently. We're down to 1 full-time janitor. I'll talk with Shannon about getting rid of that, but it's been a clunker, I guess. Had a few issues with it, so. And then kind of went over the jail boiler. I think the improvements that have happened is communication with Star, I think have improved. We've got a good feel for the problems that they were having, and I think we're moving in the right direction to take care of that and get things rolling. It never goes as fast as I want things to go, but we're going in the right direction. So, and with that, I think we're complete.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, Shanda. How'd you like that drive back home last night?
Well, I about hit a deer about 3 different times when I was driving too.
We had one.
We missed two.
I'm pretty sure we saw a vehicle on our way there that hit a deer, but they wouldn't stop because I was turning around to help them, but they just kept driving, so it's interesting. Yeah.
There were 6 more on Rapid Creek when he dropped me off.
But it's funny, the older you get, you don't like there's no rush, you know? It's like, there's no here. I'm not gonna get there any faster, going 10 more miles faster.
Good morning, Commissioners. Shannon Kistel, Chief Procurement Officer, and I'm here with
Dan Kendall, Facilities Director.
Alex Hamilton, Chief Deputy Sheriff's Office.
Walter, Maintenance Director for the Sheriff's Office.
Al Jensen, Planning Director.
And we were tasked to meet with, in regards to the jail detention roof, with the contractor as well as the manufacturer of the goods, and see if there wasn't ways that we could reduce the cost of replacing that roof. And I'm going to turn a lot of time over to the team because they are subject matter experts. But what is being passed around is the schematics of the roof, along with, if you look at the red portion, that's what we're talking about is the administration. When we talk about the administration side, is the red area. And then the blue line there is what is actually able to be mechanically secured, if I use the right wording. So those are the different areas that we're talking about as we run through this. But Hal, if you can kind of walk us through a few of the things that we looked at and what we found.
In the process of investigating that roof and in the meeting, there is a system in place called vacuum seal. So when you have a membrane roof, there's 2 ways, actually 3 ways to fasten. One is to put a ballast on top of it to hold it in place in wind. The second is to either mechanically or fully adhere it with a glue or a pin and a washer system. Then the other is this vacuum seal. Because the area that contains the cells has a concrete lid on it, the original design architect used the vacuum seal system. And it's a vent system that when the wind blows, it actually pulls the air in and it sucks the membrane down to the insulation. The design architect for the re-roof chose to keep the system the same. And we have found that the vacuum seal was used over the entire roof. In the process, we had the new contractor for this re-roof project report to us, and we discussed some of the items that we thought might give us some savings. So the area that doesn't have a concrete lid is a metal deck, and we asked them what it would cost to do metal fasteners and fasten. And we found that that really isn't going to be that cost effective because of the labor factor. Okay. The other item that we were hoping for, because there was no what's referred to as investigative demolition, which is basically where you go and look at maybe 3 or 4 sections of the existing roof, and you cut a 12-inch by 12-inch section off of the roof, find out what the total composition is. That was never done just because of the weather. And the design architect for the re-roof, Mr. Booth, made general assumptions, and he was correct. However, we thought that there was what's called a recovery board, which is a product called Den's deck, which is about a 1/2 inch thick. So you have your deck, then you have insulation, then you have the Den's deck, which is a 1/2 inch hardboard, and then the roof membrane. We were hoping that the Den's deck was in place on the original roof, and that we could leave everything in place and then just put the new membrane on. We found out that the Den's deck was never originally installed, and under the building code, the 1/2 inch recovery board is not only the ability to walk on the membrane without puncturing and damaging the insulation, but it also gives you a fire rating, which is required by code. So we found out that we don't have the Den's deck, and we do have to put the Den's deck down, so we didn't get that credit. Our recommendation, after all of the calisthenics that we've been through, is to leave the contract in place as it sits and be done.
So then we just have to identify
Additional funding.
additional funds for it.
Is that correct, Shanda? Isn't that our decision?
Right.
Okay.
Yes.
And what was we shy in funds?
$193,000.
That's what we have to
Right.
come up with?
The total cost is $943.
If you,
didn't have it written down. So if you do, that's great. And then the
Well, the-
750 that was budgeted.
The email you sent me last week said most likely the original price tag of $943. Okay. So
And how much are we short?
$193,000.
Okay.
You guys are all glum.
We had high hopes going into this,
We're
that
trying
we
to
would
save
have
some money.
better, yeah, that we would have it better.
Every corner we turned did not present a new avenue for cost savings.
Well, we need to identify the funds, and we're gonna have a conversation here in a little bit about ARPA funds more, but we gotta move forward with the project, in my opinion. I mean, it's the jail.
And I believe in our meeting, Chairman, that the contractor they are available to start once weather is conducive. So if we have everything in place and those contract funds are available, we can issue a notice to proceed early so that the contractor can then order materials and stock them. So there's a few things that we can do to get ahead of the game, depending on what happens with funding.
Go ahead.
I can find the money, so I
Hmm.
think if you're comfortable giving the
get it done.
go-ahead, I've got a couple options right now that I can think of, and then
Okay, let's get it done.
What are the options that you have right now?
we can use ARPA money, we can use the local assistance funds, the extra PILT money.
Same thing that we
Those are the
talked about
two.
for the other building.
Those are the two just right off the bat. that
I
can
think we
think
need
of
to move
without
forward.
getting-
I agree with you. Let's get this going.
We'll specify the funds, but let's move forward.
Yeah.
So if that's the direction of the board, then we'll go ahead and issue that in order to proceed. They'll go ahead and order the materials. And then they were looking at the first couple of weeks of April to do the staging. If that's the right word, to have that meeting then with the group. So.
Okay?
Okay. And in lieu of time, the procurement update is we are moving right along. The one thing I do want to report back was the question that Commissioner Moser had last week in regards to the tool bed. We purchased that tool bed on the electrician's truck for $12,291. So that's a vast difference from what is being offered. But I did want to approach the board, and I haven't talked to Dan or Scott about this, but as Buddy and I were talking about the entire fleet review we're doing, these trucks aren't getting to the level that Buddy and I are currently looking at to hold for leased vehicles. So if this is not something that we're going to recommend to the board, that we keep that vehicle as a leased vehicle, why change out and put a different bed on it? So I would like to propose that you give Buddy and I that 30 days to look and review, discuss with those departments before we move forward and potentially spend funds that might better be put on let's purchase a truck, put a flatbed on it. That just might suit the county better than doing it on a leased vehicle.
Would there be an option, since that's an electrician truck, that Enterprise could sell it and maybe sell it to an electrician around town? It's all set up.
Yes,
I've heard
as a
it's an
whole.
amazing setup for an electrician.
Yes,
So-
as a complete unit, Christie is correct.
And that's the 30 days, and to have a conversation about the 167 vehicles that we have, I think that we can wait on that. It isn't going anywhere. But we're not giving away that bed for $1,500.
Yeah.
That's all I can tell you. Okay?
That's perfect. And that's all I got to say.
All right, thank you.
Yep.
All right. We're going to take a short break, and then we'll start into our 11 o'clock meeting, and then we'll come back to our regular agenda and have the ARPA fund discussion and your discussion.
We can move, I was gonna say, if you want, we can move my discussion to next week.